Uh, 1 minute. Uh, I think I sent the recording yesterday to your mother. Did you listen to it for revision?
No, I haven't. So
Okay.
I will today. I will see.
Okay, fine. Uh, okay, 1 minute. Uh, okay, wait, I'll just check which, we'll continue with economics, right?
Right.
Okay, fine. So for the public examination, okay,
Okay.
lesson 6 is the next one. Basic
Basic economic
economics.
activities.
Yeah. So come to that lesson. Okay. Okay. So I think you got the structure of how the lesson is written, right?
Right.
Okay. So we'll do this, right?
Right. We can do this.
Okay. So production, consumption, and capital formation are called the basic economic activities of an economy, right?
Right.
So we saw what production means. Production means suppose you want packaged rice, packaged wheat, packaged oil, you have to produce it, right? You need machines.
Yes.
So production, consumption, whoever consumes the goods, right? Rice, wheat, oil, etc. And capital formation. Capital means money, right?
Right.
So how are we going to raise the money to build the factory, to build the dealer network, okay?
Okay.
So capital formation are called the basic economic activities of an economy, okay?
Okay.
Scarce resources are used in the production of goods and services with the objective of satisfying our needs and wants, right?
Right.
So scarce resources, see, you say resources, but they're not unlimited because the earth is finite, right? You
Right.
say iron, there's a huge amount of iron, right?
Right.
But still it's limited.
Okay.
Similarly, for other resources like coal, like oil, okay?
Okay.
So scarce resources are used in the production of goods and services. So the resources are used in the production of goods, right? So you can take, any goods like rice, wheat, etc., right?
Right.
And services. So whoever serves, whoever makes us use those goods. Right, I gave the example of, a washing machine, how you need the services of a, salesman to come and show you how it's operated, how it's connected, how to actually connect the machine in your home, right?
Right.
So scarce resources are used in the production of goods and services. The objective means goal, okay?
Okay.
Of satisfying our needs and wants. So whatever needs and wants we have, they must be satisfied with the help of natural resources, right? Everything comes from the earth.
Right.
Nothing comes from space, right?
Right.
So they're all limited resources, right?
Right.
So next, the process of production of goods and services is carried on by combining the factors like land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, right?
Right.
So the production of goods and services, how do you produce goods and services? Carried on by combining, right?
Right.
Factors like land. So you need land for the factory,
Yes.
and you need labor, that is the factory workers, right?
Right.
And you need capital, and capital means you have to either take a loan or, you have to raise the capital somehow. Okay.
Yes.
And entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship means that you must be able to manage all these things. Okay.
Okay.
So when you combine these factors like land, labor, capital, and all, and entrepreneurship, you can produce goods and services, right?
Right.
So what are the factors? Factors are paid rent. So if you hire a, factory shed, you have to pay rent.
Right.
Then you need to pay the wages of the factory workers. Okay?
Okay.
Then interest on whatever money you have you borrowed or things like that. Interest.
Right.
And profits for their productive services. So finally you have the profits, right?
Right.
So interest can also be the savings, every month in the factory you set aside some amount. So interest also on savings, interest on borrowed money, interest on saved money, rent, wages, and profits for their productive service, and finally profits. Okay.
Okay.
The consumption activity consists of the use of goods and services for the direct satisfaction of individual or collective human wants. So
Right.
what does consumption mean? What does activity of consumption involve? It involves the use of goods and services for the direct satisfaction of individual wants. This at the level of the individual, you or I can be satisfied by using the goods and services. We are consumers
Right.
individually, or it can be collectively. Okay,
Okay.
together, all of us, right? A part of current production is saved for future. So, a part of the current production, suppose, uh, suppose you have a factory producing cars, right?
Right.
So some a number of cars are saved for future to add to the existing capital stock, to add to the
Right.
existing money stock like plant, machinery, buildings, etc. every year in order to expand production potential in future. Right? So part of the current production. It can also be the profits.
Yes.
So it's saved for future to add to existing capital stocks. Existing
Right.
money, okay?
Okay.
Like, so you can, what do you say, enlarge the plant, make it bigger. You can get better machinery, bigger machinery, buildings, you can do more buildings. So for all this, current production is saved for future.
Right.
And you do that every year in order to expand production potential in future. So production has to be increased, right?
Right.
So whatever is produced is disposed of either for consumption or for capital formation or both. So whatever is produced. So suppose you have, cars being produced, okay?
Okay.
It is disposed for two things. Either for consumption. It is sold in the market. Cars are sold in the market.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
And the money earned is saved for future capital formation.
Right.
Or both. Right?
Right.
Okay, objectives. After completing this lesson, you'll be able to understand production and its goals.
Right.
So what do we mean by production? What are the goals of production? Know the factors of production and factor incomes. So, factors of production means what are the things involved in producing something.
Right.
Know about consumption. So, how is it sent to the market for consumption? Whatever is produced, right?
right,
Be familiar with the goods produced for consumption. So, okay, so goods produced for consumption, it can be any goods, like, I'll give the same examples: cars, rice, wheat, oil, right?
right,
Understand how production and consumption help in capital formation. So,
right,
how do the production and consumption help in raising money, raising capital, right?
right,
Explains circular flow of economic activities. Circular flow. So, whatever profit you make, it has to come back to the factory so that the factory can be expanded and the production increased. Circular flow, right? You produce something in a factory, a small factory, let's say. You produce something, you make a profit by selling them. Whatever profit has to be plowed back into the small factory to make it bigger so that more goods are produced, so that more profits are made, and those more profits are plowed back into the bigger factory until, okay, circular flow of economic activities. Okay,
okay,
okay, now we'll see. So those are the objectives of now we'll see, right? So
right,
in the last lesson, you read about scarcity of resources and making choice. So resources are scarce, right?
right,
These scarce resources are used in the production of goods and services. Okay.
okay,
The goal of production is to satisfy our wants. Okay.
right, okay,
These goods and services produced can be sold in markets or can be provided by the government to public at nominal charge. So suppose you have rice being produced, right?
right,
Now there are different varieties of rice. You have 57 rupee per kg rice, you have 85, you have basmati rice, 150 rupees per kg.
right,
So whatever goods can be sold in the market, or if you have a lower price, like 25 rupees per kg,
right,
that rice is provided by the government to public at nominal charge.
yes,
Okay.
okay,
Okay. Therefore, production is defined as creation of utility. So producing some goods means, how do you define creation of utility? Utility means use.
yes,
Okay. Production activities involve making goods and services. Okay.
okay,
People who make and sell these goods and services are known as producers, right?
right,
So factory owners are producers. They make goods and, okay, they also provide services. Okay.
okay,
The producers combine the factors like land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, okay,
okay,
along with raw materials. Raw materials means, suppose you're producing cars, raw material is iron,
right,
steel, okay,
okay,
and also plastic for some parts of the car. Okay,
okay,
so many raw materials in order to transform them into various goods and services, right? Various goods, not only cars, can be anything.
right,
Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship are called the factors of production.
right,
Okay? So that's highlighted, so you must remember that. That will come. What are the factors of production? You must say land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship.
okay,
So entrepreneurship, you must get the spelling right. Okay?
right, okay,
So the producers try to produce maximum amount of goods and services, right? So they must utilize the capacity of the factory to the maximum
right,
by using various combination of factors of production. Let us know more about these factors of production. Okay? So how is the factory utilized to its full capacity? So we must know about the factors of production, right?
Right.
So the first factor of production is land.
Right.
Land is a gift of nature, right?
Right.
So it means land includes plain region, mountains and plateau regions. Plateau means it rises to a certain height, then becomes plain.
Right.
So it includes plain region. Plain means it's flat, mountainous regions and plateau regions. Those are the things about land. Okay.
Okay.
Plain region is useful for agriculture. So if you have a large amount of flat land, you can plow it, you can irrigate it, you can harvest the crops. So it's useful for agriculture
Right.
and industrial activity. So you can build factories on flat land, on plain land, right?
Right.
Mountains ensure flow of rivers into the plain region. So how do rivers flow? They flow from the mountains to the plains
Okay.
and provide facilities for tourism. So mountains means it's very cool up, in the mountains. So
Okay.
tourists go there during the summer.
Right.
Okay. Plateau region possesses reserves of minerals. So, you heard of the Deccan Plateau, right?
Right.
So these plateau regions, they have reserves of minerals, like, so many, like minerals like, copper, iron, like that.
Okay.
Fossil fuels, that is oil, coal, natural gas, fossil fuels,
Right.
and forests, right?
Right.
Production of food, grains, vegetables, fruits, etc. require agricultural land in the plain region. Right? So see, production of food grains, wheat, rice, like that, vegetables, fruits requires agricultural land in the plain region. So that is one type of goods, food grains, vegetables and fruits.
Right.
Along with this, people also carry out animal husbandry. Animal husbandry means farms, cows, sheep, goat, poultry, chicken farming, right? Eggs, like that.
Right.
That's called animal husbandry. And then fisheries. Fisheries means they dig a pit in the ground. So they have a lot about, let's say, a quarter of an acre. They dig a hole in the ground. They line the hole with plastic sheet. They fill the hole with water, right? Then they introduce fish. Okay?
Okay.
So these fish breed and so you can catch fish. They're called fisheries. Okay?
Right. Okay.
And forestry. Forestry means all sorts of trees
Okay.
like teak, sal, oak, willow. So many types of trees,
Right.
which are called allied activities, right?
Right.
So these are called allied activities, which animal husbandry, fisheries and forestry are called allied. That is related activities. Okay?
Right. Okay.
In India, rural area is known for carrying out agricultural and allied activities. Right?
Right.
Rural area, in the village side, they carry out agriculture and allied activities. Okay.
Okay.
Some amount of land in the plain region is specially developed to establish industries and urban areas such as towns and cities. So, uh, okay, some amount of land in the plain region is specially developed to establish industries. Okay,
Okay.
so if you go to, have you heard of this place called Pina?
Yes, I have heard of.
So Pina Industrial Estate. So nothing but factory sheds there,
Okay.
large and small, medium scale industries, small scale industries. So, see, it's used to establish industries, right?
Right.
And urban areas such as towns and cities. So in the plain region, they established towns and cities.
Right.
Okay, next, labor. In general, labor implies a human effort through physical and mental exertions in the production of goods and services. So labor means what? Human effort, people's effort, that's factory workers' effort, and they can put the effort physically as well as mentally. That is, they have to plan, they have to build like that. So that requires mental exertion. Okay?
Okay.
And they used to produce goods and services, right?
Right.
Okay. A person working on the agricultural field is said to provide his physical labor, right?
Right.
While a writer of a book is said to provide his mental labor, right?
Right.
People who provide labor are known as human resources, right?
Right.
Production activities require both skilled and unskilled labor. So production activities require both skilled. That is, you need to know something. Okay, you need to have a degree. That is,
Okay.
and unskilled labor. So that is digging in the ground. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, so masons are, I mean, skilled and unskilled labor, right?
Right.
Purely physical labor such as loading and unloading, plowing on the field, etc., do not require special skill.
Right.
So what do you mean by unskilled labor? See, loading and unloading lorries, trains like that,
Right.
plowing on the field do not require special skill, right?
Right.
But to become an engineer, doctor, teacher, lawyer, mechanic, electrician, or tailor, one must acquire skill through education and training, right?
Right.
So now you know what skilled labor means, you know what unskilled labor means, right?
Yes. Right.
So both skilled and unskilled labor, the people, they're known as human resources, right?
Right.
And both skilled and unskilled, they are they're involved in the production of goods and services. Okay,
Okay.
so capital. By capital, we mean all man-made appliances and all types of wealth used in production. All man-made appliances, like it can be the machines in a factory,
Okay.
and all types of wealth used in production.
Okay.
Okay, capital consists of machinery, tools, buildings, materials, etc. Okay,
Okay.
whereas land is a natural resource, capital is a man-made resource.
Right.
Capital is used to increase the efficiency of other factors of production like land or labor. Okay, so
Okay.
capital is used to increase the efficiency. Efficiency means if you have a certain amount of land,
All right.
okay, and that certain amount of land produces a certain amount of goods, if you make it more efficient, the same land with better machinery can produce more goods.
Right.
Okay, so efficiency of like land or labor. Okay, okay.
Okay.
Now what does it say? The efficiency of land can be increased by the use of better irrigation facilities and machines. So, see, efficiency of land. Suppose you're growing rice.
Right.
If you irrigate it better, then what will happen? The efficiency will increase. The rice produced will be more. Okay?
Okay.
Then you have machines. On a certain amount of land, you have machines. Okay? How can the efficiency
Okay.
of that land be increased? By using better machines. Efficiency will be more, production of the factory will be more.
Okay.
Okay, okay. However, capital is a passive factor. So you have money, it's passive, it's just sitting there. It's not active, right?
right,
It's the user that makes it active. So capital is a passive factor of production and cannot be used without employing labor. So you need a manager to manage the capital, and you need the factory worker also to produce the goods. So see, capital is a passive factor of production and cannot be used without employing labor. Labor means both skilled and unskilled
okay,
to work. Okay, to work, to produce something, right?
right,
Capital has a limited span of life and becomes obsolete after a certain period. So, how is capital defined above? It's defined, it can be material, it can be machinery. See, look at the second sentence in this paragraph. Capital consists of machinery, tools, buildings, materials, etc. Okay.
okay,
Now, machines have a limited span of life because always they're producing better quality of machines. Okay.
okay,
Materials also change. So see, if you take a car factory in the 80s, 90s like that, all the car factories had a lot of factory workers. But now the car factories have robots. Okay,
okay,
the whole production line is lined with robots.
right,
So see, machinery means it has a limited span of life. What was factory workers in the 80s and 90s become robots. It's a limited span of life. Okay?
okay,
And becomes obsolete after a certain period. So after a certain period, even the robots will become obsolete and something else will take their place. Okay?
okay,
AI. So AI will govern, it will make everything. Okay?
okay,
So machinery also becomes obsolete. So small tools like screwdrivers, calculators to heavy machines like engines, tractors are all examples of fixed capital,
right,
as they can be used in production for many years, right?
right,
Then fixed capital also includes the buildings and the heavy machines, right?
right,
The working capital includes raw materials like cotton, yarn, clay, seeds, fertilizers, which are used up in the process of production.
okay.
Okay. So I think you understood that.
Yes, I have understood.
Okay, next entrepreneurship, right?
Right,
Somebody must take the initiative to start the process of production of goods or services by bringing land, labor, and capital together in right proportion. So someone must get the idea to start the production of goods or services, okay?
okay,
And we must bring land, labor, and capital in the right proportion.
right,
Okay, so you must not have too much labor, too little land, too little. So you must bring these three into the right proportion.
okay,
He will be responsible for choosing the right type of land, labor, and capital,
right,
and take important decisions with respect to quantity to be produced, money to be spent to buy the raw factors and raw materials, marketing the output, etc. Okay?
okay,
So, entrepreneurship is the art of organizing the production activity. Okay?
okay,
The person who makes the decision and controls the production process and bears the risks and uncertainties involved in production is called an entrepreneur. So an entrepreneur, he makes the decisions and controls the production process, but he also has to bear the risks and uncertainties. So, you know, there are risks involved in production, right?
Okay.
She should be knowledgeable, courageous, and should possess leadership qualities. Leadership qualities means he has to lead a large number of workers, managers, okay,
Okay.
so on. The objective of an entrepreneur is to get maximum production by using the given resources
Right.
and make arrangements for the sale of the finished products, right?
Right.
She is also responsible to make payments to other factors of production. So there's a large amount of payments to be made, right?
Right.
She pays wages to the laborers, rent to the landlords, and interest to the owner of capital in return for the productive services. So he pays rent to the landlord on which his factory is placed, right?
Right.
He pays wages to the laborers and interest to the owner of capital. So whatever capital is borrowed, he has to pay interest, okay,
Okay.
in return for the productive services. So similarly, they can profit for their productive activities. So they can earn profit, right?
Right.
Since these payments, rent, wages, interest, and profit, are received by the factors for their productive services, they are termed as factor incomes.
Right.
Okay, so that is also highlighted. So you must remember that what are the factor incomes means? Payments of rent, wages, interest, and profits are received by the factors for their productive services,
Right.
and they are termed as factor incomes, right?
Right.
Okay, so next factor incomes. These factors of production are owned by people. Okay, what are the factors of production? Land is owned by the landlord. Okay,
Okay.
labor is owned by the laborer. Capital is owned by people who acquire capital goods. Entrepreneurship is owned by the entrepreneur.
Okay.
The owners of factors of production are paid in return for their productive services, right?
Right.
When you hire a piece of land, you pay rent to the landlord for using the services of land. Okay?
Okay.
Thus, the tenant pays rent for the services of land. Labor refers to the services rendered by the workers. Okay?
Okay.
It refers to all the types of workers, manual labor, technical workers, and so on. Okay?
Okay.
When an employer requires the services rendered by a worker, she is ready to pay for his services. By hiring a worker, actually services are hired. When a loan is taken, okay, when a
Okay.
loan is taken from a bank to buy a tractor, seeds, machinery, etc., interest is paid to bank. Okay?
Okay.
Thus, rent is paid to the landlords, wages to the laborers, interest to the owners of capital, resources, and profit to the entrepreneurs. Okay?
Okay.
Since they are paid in return to their productive services, they are called factor payments. Uh, their incomes are called factor incomes. Okay?
Okay.
Clear?
Clear.
Okay, next we'll go to consumption. Right?
Okay.
1 minute. Okay. Consumption, right?
Right.
Okay. The objective of production is to produce goods and services for consumption. The consumption activity consists of the use of goods and services for the direct satisfaction of individual or collective human wants and needs. So,
Okay.
consumption activity means it's the use of goods and services for the satisfaction of individual human wants or collective human wants. Wants, yesterday we talked about hunger, comfort, warmth.
Okay.
So, to satisfy the wants, whatever wants we have, we need uh, goods and services. So, when we consume the goods and services, it's known as consumption activity. Okay?
Okay.
To satisfy their wants, the households purchase a large variety of goods and services like cycles, furniture, television set, car, refrigerator, food grains, milk, oil, soap, etc. And services like barber, teacher, doctor, bank, and insurance companies, etc. Okay?
Okay.
So goods are like one set and services are the other set.
Right.
There is no time gap between the production and consumption of services. Yesterday we talked about how the doctor, when he examines a patient and writes a prescription, there's no time gap. Okay?
Okay.
Similarly, if you go to a bank, and you give the check, it's in cash. There's no time gap in the services.
Okay.
Hmm?
Yes.
In case of services, production and consumption take place simultaneously. In case of services, take the example of doctor, production and consumption take place simultaneously together.
Right.
They're consumed as soon as they're produced, such as the services of doctors, lawyers, teachers, etc. Okay?
Okay.
As you visit a doctor to take medical advice, you consume his service. Okay? And this is not the case with regard to goods. There is a time gap between the production and consumption of goods. So yesterday we talked about chairs. From the wood to the chair, it takes a certain amount of time to produce a chair. And then there's a certain amount of time gap before the chair is bought and used. So in the case of goods, there is a time gap. In the case of services, there's no time gap. Okay?
Okay.
However, certain durable goods like furniture cycle continue to provide services for many years. Durable goods, those which can be used again and again. Still, they're considered to be consumed as soon as they are purchased. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Capital formation. So this is the last part, I think. Yeah, it's the last part. Okay.
Okay.
So capital formation, the third important activity of an economy is capital formation. Okay. As you have read, factor owners get factor incomes. Okay. What are factor incomes? Like, oh, they have to pay rent to the landlord, wages to the worker, interest to the what? Interest to the lender of the money. Those are factor incomes, right?
Okay.
Uh, so you must keep all the previous information in mind when you come to the okay.
Okay.
So as you have read, factor owners get factor incomes in return for their productive services. So factor like worker gets wages for his productive service. Okay,
Okay.
like and then borrower lender gets interest for his money lent. Okay, So factor owners get factor incomes in return for their productive services. They spend a large part of their incomes on goods and services such as food articles, cloth, furniture, housing, bicycles, education, healthcare, etc. Right? All
Right.
the people who earn income from production activities use a large part of their income on goods and services such as food articles, cloth, furniture, housing, bicycles, education, healthcare, etc. Okay?
Okay.
However, they do not spend their entire income on these goods and services, right?
Okay.
They also save some income and deposit it in bank for future, right?
Right.
For example, if an individual has an income of 500 rupees, all of which she consumes, there is no saving. Instead, if she restricts her consumption to 300 and she saves 200 and may use this money to deposit in bank for future use, right?
Right.
The bank in turn may use this money to lend an industrialist to invest in the expansion of business. So you have a large number of depositors who save money. So in a bank you literally have crores of rupees in savings.
Right.
Now the bank can use this money to lend it to an industrialist, okay? And
Okay.
the industrialist in turn pays the bank interest on the money he has borrowed. So the
Right.
bank earns an income, okay?
Okay.
And the bank uses the money deposited by the people who save.
Okay.
Okay. So the bank in turn uses money to lend an industrialist to invest in the expansion of his business. Right?
Right.
Capital formation is done by refraining from present consumption. So how can you have a lot of capital if you refrain, if you stop, present consumption?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So if you save uh, money, you'll have capital, right? Refraining means stopping. Okay.
Okay.
It should be noted that saving, if kept idle, cannot constitute capital formation. So you keep saving in your locker at home, it won't earn any interest.
Okay.
But if you put it in the bank, they'll give you a certain amount of interest.
Right.
So, see, it should be noted that saving, if kept idle means it's not earning anything, any interest. So if it's
Right.
kept idle, it cannot constitute capital formation. Okay?
Okay.
If a person saves money and locks it up in the house, no capital formation takes place. If
Right.
only the saved money is invested in capital goods, it leads to capital formation by facilitating production and consumption in future. See, if you save money and you invest it in capital goods, it can be something like precious metals,
Right.
okay, or it can be something like factory, right?
Mm.
So if it's invested in capital goods, it leads to capital formation by facilitating production and consumption in future.
Right.
Thus, current consumption is foregone and used towards adding to existing capital stock like plant, machinery, building, etc. every year in order to expand production potential in future. So, if you take the example of a factory,
Right.
if the current consumption is foregone means it's given up. If you stop spending money now, okay, it can be used towards adding to existing capital like plant, machinery, building, etc.
Right.
every year in order to expand production potential in future. Okay?
Okay.
You can build a bigger factory with the amount saved now, right?
Right.
This increase in the stock of capital goods in a year is called capital formation or investment. So when you use the money and you buy better machinery, bigger buildings, etc., that is called capital formation or investment.
Right.
Similarly, a part of a nation's output is devoted to immediate satisfaction of consumer wants. So on the national level, okay,
Okay.
that literally lakhs of thousands of lakhs of crores of rupees.
Yes.
So on a part of a nation's output is devoted to immediate satisfaction of consumer wants. So they have to satisfy the needs of the people, food, etc.
Right.
But to the provision of plants and equipment by which production is sustained and is maintained and expanded. So it is also used, it's used for provision of plants and equipment by which production is maintained and expanded. So suppose you have rice factory, right?
Right.
So in the nation, rice factories, they spend on producing rice.
Yes.
And from the profits they make, they can expand the factories, right?
Right.
To sum up, whatever is produced is disposed of either for consumption or for capital formation or both. So whatever is produced, right?
Right.
It is disposed either for consumption or for capital formation or both.
Yes.
Can be invested, the profits can be invested, okay?
Okay.
So whatever is produced, if you produce rice, it can be consumed, or from the profits you can invest it, or both, right? You can
Right.
invest it to produce more rice. You follow it?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
These three activities, production, consumption, and capital formation, are interrelated, right? So
Right.
production should follow, see, production means supply. If you're going to supply rice, there should be consumption, there should be demand for rice.
Right.
And the demand for how much amount of rice you produce, it depends on the amount of money, capital you put into the factory.
Right.
So production, consumption, and capital formation are interrelated. Okay?
Okay.
An increase in the production of goods and services increases the level of consumption. So if you
Right.
produce more goods, consumption will increase and capital formation will also increase. Okay?
Okay.
Increase in consumption is an indicator of rising standard of living of people. So increase in consumption. See, if more rice is consumed, obviously the standard of living of people has gone up. If
Okay.
more TVs are sold, if more cars are sold, if more, buildings are built, that means there's an increase in standard of living. Okay?
Okay.
So, what does it say? Increase in consumption is an indicator of rising standard of living of people. An increase in capital formation is very important as the growth of the country depends on growth of the country. So if everyone in the country has to be comfortable, that means, okay,
Okay.
there should be bigger machines, there should be more efficient machines, there must be like that. So capital formation, increase in capital form. Remember what capital means. It can be land, plants, machinery, like that. That
Yeah.
is capital. So increase in capital formation is very important to the growth of the country. And it depends on it. The growth of the country depends on the increase in capital formation.
Right.
More consumption is possible if there's more production, and more production is possible if there's more capital formation. Okay?
Okay.
Thus, the three economic activities have their impact on one another to take the economy forward to the path of development. Okay? Is it clear?
Yes, it is clear.
Okay, I think we reached the end of the lesson.
Yes.
I think you can study this picture. Goods and
O-
services go from factories to households, and from the households you have land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, right? So there's
Right.
circular.
Yes.
So that we'll continue tomorrow, right?
Right. We
Okay.
can continue.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Good night. Good night.